Leon and Chris are getting old, and Capcom's been building their replacements, and one of them isn't even fully human anymore. Resident Evil finally hands us a protagonist who walked in from a newsroom instead of a boot camp. Grace Ashcroft is an FBI analyst, not a field operative, and that distinction matters more than you think. She's Alyssa Ashcroft's daughter, pulling deep lore from Resident Evil Outbreak, but onto the main stage after years of collecting dust. The setup drags her straight back to the Wrenwood Hotel, the exact location where her mother died. So she's not just investigating random deaths at her desk anymore. Someone decided she needed to personally walk into that building that destroyed her family, armed with field tech and way more fear than actual training. That's Requiem's entire vibe condensed into one assignment. The game's director literally called Grace the most fearful character in Resident Evil history, compared to Leon Kennedy being the strongest. That's a deliberate flip. She starts terrified, not tactical. You're playing someone whose first instinct is, what's happening, instead of, where's my shotgun? She earns survival skills instead of spawning with them preloaded. Leon and Chris move through bioterror like it's a known battlefield, but Grace navigates through logic, deduction, and genuine fear responses that most players would actually have. When she's running from something chasing her down hallways, she's reacting like an actual real person would, which for Resident Evil is refreshing for us, but a very toxic transition for Grace. Her motivation is personal trauma, not professional duty. Returning to her mother's death site means the story centers on closure and confronting literal demons, not just containing another outbreak. That emotional weight grounds Requiem's return to survival horror fundamentals. You're not just controlling a super soldier, you're controlling someone with legitimate reasons to be terrified, fighting through it anyway because the answers she needs are buried in the same places that killed her family. Rose Winters is not infected. That word doesn't even apply anymore. Rose Winters was damn near born through the Megamycete mutagenic network due to Ethan and Maya, which basically means bioweapon science skipped the lab phase and went straight to next-gen human. Somehow, her mind, emotions, and identity stayed intact. That's like something we see in the X-Men with mutants coming into their powers, but with an extra level of Resident Evil horror. Shadow of Rose already proved she moves through the mold realm like it's just another day in the park. The government doesn't file her under quote-unquote person. She's classified as a special threat asset, which is one of the most uncomfortable ways to say, we're watching you. Fans of the series don't think she's meant to be a weapon, and playing through Resident Evil Village, it doesn't give that type of vibe either. But as we've seen, if you're not an asset and helping in this world, you're an enemy or a threat. The Shadow of Rose DLC was cool, but not big enough for the larger scope of the series and her potential as a character for me personally. But what's interesting about Rose is that she might actually be the cure. Her biology could neutralize other mutagens, making her the answer to the entire bioweapon era instead of the next super soldier. That identity crisis drives her entire arc. Rose could be a different pivot for the franchise where she doesn't just fight monsters but becomes some sort of example or like an adaptation to model from for other special characters in the series. She's the emotional anchor for this new era. Rose is currently working with Chris Redfield and his elite security detail, which sets her up great for future leads. I've seen some rumors link her to Resident Evil Requiem, where she might investigate a Neo-Umbrella group called the Sanctuary, using psychic abilities and specialized tech like a morphic visor. As the golden child of the Megamycete, her consciousness connects to a neural network of memories, meaning she could potentially resurrect or communicate with characters with minds that are still stored within the mold. The DLC left massive questions unanswered. In 2037, Rose mentions she hasn't seen her mother Maya in ages. The game never clarifies if Maya's dead, in hiding, or captured by the connections. After her savage fight with Mother Miranda, Rose wakes up holding Ethan's physical wedding ring, which she previously only had in the dream realm. Can her powers bring physical objects out of the mold, or is Ethan's consciousness somehow anchored to that same ring? The post-credit scenes show a distant figure walking towards Rose's car. Fans debate if it's a hallucination of Ethan, a village survivor, or a new threat entirely. She survived Raccoon City as a kid, which just in itself in the Resident Evil world can classify as a feat most grown people wouldn't even be able to do. Sherry walked out of a bio-apocalypse with the G-virus in her system, and instead of turning into a monster, her body actually stabilized it. Now she has regeneration, slowed aging, and a permanent government file with her name in bold red letters. By Resident Evil 6, she's working as a federal operative, tied into the same anti-bioterror infrastructure Leon operates in. The twist, I guess, is that her blood helped develop antiviral treatments. She's a medical breakthrough, which also means she's an asset, and assets don't exactly get to resign. God forbid you want to leave and actually have a normal life. But there's this ongoing debate between fans about whether Sherry's an ethical scientist trying to fix her father's damage, or basically a controlled government resource with just enough freedom to feel independent. When your biology is classified, your life kind of is too. Files labeled Birkin stabilized subject / classified clearance omega suggest she's monitored at the highest security levels. Looking ahead to Resident Evil 9 and beyond could position her as Grace's potential contact, creating mentor dynamics between someone who's survived the nightmare as a child and someone walking into it fresh. Sherry's the walking bridge between the 98 Raccoon City and modern bioterror operations. As a DSO operative and peer to Leon Kennedy, I've seen some rumors hint at her possibly returning in Resident Evil Requiem as a handler or some kind of support specialist. Again, her G-virus exposure gives her slowed aging and that enhanced healing, making her physically capable of leading frontline operations for decades while others retire. She could mentor characters like Rose Winters, helping them manage superhuman abilities derived from biological infections. The unanswered questions continue to pile up for Sherry. Nobody knows if she can still mutate under extreme stress or further viral exposure. Her blood was already used to engineer the C-virus, making her a high-value target for bioterrorists. Sherry spent years as a ward of Derek C. Simmons, serving as a national security asset and basically a damn lab rat just to avoid execution. What the government still expects from her as a biological asset remains unexplored. Sherry and Jake Mueller remained in contact after Resident Evil 6, but whether they'll continue fighting bioterrorism together hasn't been shown yet. The missing years between 1998 Raccoon City and her 2012 appearance in Adonia are still hidden in classified files. Jake Mueller is Albert Wesker's son. Yes, Resident Evil's favorite crash out continues his reign of terror now through his offspring, which means he inherited the genes, all the potential, just not the god complex. Maybe. During Resident Evil 6, his blood was used to create the vaccine for the C-virus, Anti-C, and was also used by Carla Radamez to engineer a more potent enhanced C-virus. After that, he vanishes into mercenary work. Balkans, war zones, places where outbreaks happen quietly and no one files the paperwork. He hates bioterrorism, but he also takes contracts in regions wrecked by it. The moral gray zone is way more interesting than another squeaky clean agent. Jake represents legacy redemption, kind of. He's proof Wesker's DNA didn't automatically produce another crash out, but he's also someone who takes advantage of the genetic lottery he was born into. He's not trying to save the world or repair any of the damage from his father. He's just trying to survive while making money off the chaos. If Resident Evil 9 brings him back, he's not joining the team out of heroism. He's the reluctant contact, the guy who says, I'll help, but this isn't charity. Some fan speculation shows him with cybernetic upgrades or antiviral injection tech built into his gear. He's the Wesker who walks in daylight, and that contrast is exactly why the character works. I've seen some theories position him as the potential enemy turned ally type. Someone Leon or Grace might need to recruit despite his questionable employment history. He was last seen in an unnamed Middle Eastern country, fighting BOWs for the price of a single apple. That vigilante lifestyle positions him as an independent wildcard operative who could assist the BSAA or DSO from the shadows, similar to Ada Wong. Fans theorize he could partner with Rose Winters, forming a new elite duo with their naturally born cracked abilities. BSAA scientists launched a worldwide manhunt for Jake after the C-virus outbreak. fearing the virus would mutate beyond the current vaccine's effectiveness. Whether he's running from them or working with them in secret remains unknown. His mother was an amazing political figure from Madonia, who loved Wesker until her death, but whether she was a former Umbrella scientist or an innocent civilian hasn't really been detailed yet. Jake chose not to kill Chris despite Chris admitting to killing Wesker, leaving their unfinished dynamic as a major source of crash-out potential. As the son of a man genetically altered by the Wesker Project, nobody knows if Jake's enhanced strength, speed, and healing will continue evolving, or if he'll eventually face the same instability or God complex that consumed his father. Moira Burton survived Revelations 2 and came out stronger on the other side. She started with trauma, fear, and a serious aversion to guns. Instead of magically becoming a badass overnight, she grew through it. She processed the trauma. She learned to fight back and earn every bit of strength she gained. That makes her a perfect fit for the grounded, mortal protagonist direction Capcom's hinting at with Requiem. Moira isn't enhanced. She isn't government trained. She's just someone that went through hell and decided she wasn't going to let the bullshit define her. It's easy to imagine her returning not as a soldier, but as like an activist, investigator, or some kind of underground voice exposing biodisaster cover-ups. Not with a rocket launcher, but with information. She's the kind of character who reminds you what's at stake on a human level. Fans praised her development because it feels earned rather than random or convenient. Her connections to new generation characters like Grace or Zoe make actual narrative sense. Grassroots investigators versus institutional power structures creates that type of conflict that can really give Resident Evil a different kind of feel and edge. I see a lot of posts and threads frequently trying to push her as the next cycle's Claire Redfield equivalent, someone tough enough to survive but human enough to stay relatable. Visually, the game shows her tracking orphan BOW reports through leaked Umbrella databases, turning survivor experience into investigative advantage. As a full-time TerraSave member, she could return as a lead operative or handler for new recruits, mirroring Claire's evolution from civilian to seasoned activist. Barry adopted Natalia Korda in the good ending, making her Moira's adoptive sister. If Natalia's latent Alex Wesker's consciousness resurfaces, Moira would likely be the primary character tasked with saving or stopping her. The complications pretty much remain unsolved. Moira was infected with the T-Phobo virus, which triggers mutations upon extreme fear. She survived by conquering her fear, but the virus remains in her system. Nobody knows if she's permanently immune or if future trauma could still trigger mutation. She overcame her phobia to save Claire by shooting Neil Fisher. But whether she's fully embraced firearms or still prefers that crowbar remains unclear. She survived 6 months on Sheshistovny Island with Evgeny Rybik's help, transitioning from rebellious teenager to hardened survivalist in a character shift that hasn't really been explored in our eyes yet fully. In Resident Evil, some ghosts grow up. Revelations 2 strongly implied that Alex Wesker succeeded in transferring her consciousness into Natalia Korda's mind. Years have passed in universe, making Natalia a young adult now, outwardly normal, but maybe not alone in her own head. Fans labeled her the ticking Wesker, and honestly, that's a pretty fair assessment coming from who she had to deal with. Capcom set that up way too deliberately to just forget about it. The horror here isn't mutation, it's identity. If Alex is still in there, is Natalia living her own life or sharing it? She'd make an incredibly moral gray character, not a mustache-twirling villain, but someone whose motives are always a little unclear. Plus, there were always those scenes where her voice overlapped slightly with another tone underneath. Potential Resident Evil 9 storylines could show Natalia manipulating Blue Umbrella's data streams to rebuild or reclaim Wesker legacy projects. She could function as a suitable antagonist or a morally skewed informant similar to Ada's relationship with Leon. Her identity crisis reflects post-human continuity themes perfectly. The body is a vessel, the mind operates like a virus, and consciousness becomes the real battlefield. She's valuable because she represents biological horror at the psychological level. The most interesting path to me shows her as the main antagonist, using the Burton family's resources to rebuild the Wesker legacy. A future game could feature a dual personality mechanic where players struggle to maintain Natalia's humanity while fighting off Alex's influence, creating a unique protagonist anti-hero hybrid. Given her natural immunity to fear and connections to T-Phobos, she could become a queen figure controlling BOWs through psychic or biological links. Nobody knows what happened in the Burtons' household between 2013 and now. Has she been secretly experimenting in Barry's basement, or is Alex sleeping until a specific trigger occurs? Her psychic abilities let her sense monsters through walls and identify weak points in Revelations 2. Whether these powers evolved into full telekinesis or direct viral manipulation remains unknown. Her stuffed bear Lottie was used as a psychological anchor, with Dark Natalia using it to taunt the real Natalia in the Little Miss DLC. The question stands, is the real Natalia already gone? And since she's technically the last Wesker, her potential interaction with Jake Mueller almost seems inevitable. This one is a deep cut, but an important one. Manuela Hidalgo survived the T. Veronica infection in Darkside Chronicles, which already puts her in rare company. A stabilized viral host who did lose herself, and then the story just never followed up, which in Resident Evil terms usually means they're saving that story. She's the evolutionary bridge between older virus experiments and characters like Rose. She proves humans can integrate with viral structures and stay human. That's huge thematically. Capcom never confirmed her death, leaving her existence up to speculation, enough for easy reintroduction. I've seen fan theories place her under Umbrella Europe's custody, or hidden in some weird-ass genetic witness program. Old surveillance footage showing her aging normally would prove she beat the infection long-term. Science wanted her dead because she represented an uncontrolled variable. The story never really needed her gone, which is why her absence feels deliberate rather than conclusive. Her value in Resident Evil 9 and beyond wouldn't be combat strength or special abilities. It's what her survival proves about viral compatibility and human resilience. She could link to Sherry's laboratory oversight branch, serving as an ethical mirror. Both survived viral integrations, but their paths diverged based on who controlled their treatments afterwards. She's the only person to successfully control the T. Veronica virus and retain her human form. Her pyrokinetic blood could make her a powerful ally like Sherry, or the virus's long-term effects might turn her into a tragic antagonist Leon must stop. Her father claims she never needed organ transplants and antiretroviral drugs for 15 years to stabilize. That period ended in 2017. Nobody knows if her body successfully integrated the virus or if she still requires medical intervention. Resident Evil 4's remake's dialogue, this time it has to be different, sparked crazy amounts of speculation that Operation Javier was retconned darker, really implying Manuela died in the new timeline. Her survivor's guilt over the murdered girls whose organs kept her alive remains unexplored. Polly Burton is Barry's youngest daughter, mentioned in Revelations 2 epilogue, but never seen in actual gameplay. She never saw Raccoon City, but she lives in its shadows every single day. Unlike Moira, Polly represents innocence that bioterror hasn't directly touched yet. She's thematically crucial as the bystander generation. This is like the people who inherit a post-bioterror world without experiencing the outbreaks that created it. They know the history, understand the stakes, but their knowledge comes secondhand through family stories and government warnings. Polly could anchor the emotional heart of future Resident Evil media, whether that's a streaming series or DLC backstories. Fans position her as a next-gen tech specialist or a civilian voice of reason character. Every hero needs someone still worth protecting, and Polly fills that role symbolically. She closes Barry's family legacy arc. The Burtons now span 3 distinct Resident Evil eras, from Barry's original STARS days through Moira's survival horror experience to Polly's post-outbreak existence. Visual design concepts echo Grace's journalist aesthetic, but without the field scars. She could serve as the ground civilian character thrusted into a biohazard zone, forcing the entire Burton family to mobilize for rescue. Alternatively, another way could be that she might work for TerraSave as a biodata analyst or logistics coordinator, providing intel to frontline agents without combat trauma, without going through the fight. If Alex Wesker fully takes over Natalia, Polly becomes the most vulnerable target and emotional catalyst for the series. When Wesker threatened Barry's family in 1998, Polly was a young child. Whether she remembers the incident or was even told the truth about why they moved to Canada remains unknown. During Moira's distance from Barry, Polly was the only one living with him. Her perspective on the family rift has never been explored. How does the forgotten middle child feel about Natalia joining the family? Jealousy or suspicion towards the mysterious gifted girl Barry brought home could be significant narrative gold. As of 2026, Polly would be in her late 20s or early 30s. Her whereabouts and profession are a complete blank slate, making her a wild card Capcom could reintroduce at any time. She lived through a family that wasn't human anymore. Zoe Baker survived Resident Evil 7 with first-hand knowledge about the Connection's role behind Evelyn's creation. That insider information makes her a key asset for any bioconspiracy exposure timeline. Reddit stories track her under BSAA witness protection programs following Resident Evil 8. She knows where the bodies are buried, and more importantly, where the patents and research data are hidden. Her testimony could dismantle entire networks if she went public. Plot points position her as a mentor or intelligence source for Grace, sharing classified files from the Connections that official channels just won't touch. The pairing makes sense. Grace hunts truth through journalism. Zoe survived truth's ugliest face through 3 years trapped with bioweapon contamination. Guilt, redemption, and truth drive her potential arc. She helped her father conduct experiments on people. She watched her family deteriorate into monsters. That guilt fuels her need to expose the systems that enabled everything. She's the perfect civilian ally archetype to balance newer combat-focused heroes. Zoe doesn't fight, she informs. She provides the intelligence that makes missions even possible. Her value is straight knowledge that no training can replicate. As seen in the village's Baker incident report, Zoe now works as a reporter and researcher exposing the truth behind the mold. She could serve as an intel gatherer or handler for future protagonists, similar to Ingrid Hunnigan. Having been cured by the E-Series vaccine, her unique biological data could help Blue Umbrella or BSAA develop countermeasures against new fungal strains. Since she survived the original Evelyn infection, she's one of the few who could truly understand Rose Winter's condition, potentially mentoring her through the Megamyces stored memories. Although cured, Zoe spent years calcified and infected. Does she retain biological immunity or minor echoes of the mold's hive mind that could sense future outbreaks? She lived under the Connection for years. What stolen data or secrets did she recover from the Baker estate? And is she being hunted for it? As sole heir to the Baker family, will she return to Dulvey to reclaim her home, or has she permanently moved on to a new identity under Chris's protection? Once rescued by a hero, Ashley is now powerful enough to command resources that heroes could never access. Ashley Graham survived Resident Evil 4's Las Plagas incident as the US president's daughter. The remake showcased her emotional intelligence and resilience under extreme pressure. Her perspective grounds the next phase in policy-level anti-bioweapon debates. If she's in political office now, who's pulling the strings behind her decisions? A lot of fan theories place her as a bioterror reform advocate or government counter liaison specifically assigned to work with Leon's operations. Ashley's presence allows Capcom to shift toward global diplomacy storylines focused on bioethics and weapon accountability. The franchise could explore how international laws handle bioterrorism threats and who profits from keeping regulations weak. Cinematic vibes would show Leon briefing her in dim light, warning that new monsters are being developed inside programs her father's administration created. Ashley represents the human face of political reform working against Umbrella's legacy. Her trauma gives her moral authority that career politicians lack. When she argues for stricter bioweapon regulations, she speaks from personal experience of being affected and nearly transformed. In the remake's ending, Ashley suggests she might become an agent herself one day. Her increased agency, operating heavy machinery and rescuing Leon in the castle, really shows she could transition into field support or an operative role like Sherry Birkin. Popular theories put her eventually returning as President of the United States in her 40s, leading global resistance against bioterrorism while calling on veterans like Leon as her personal bodyguard or top agent, which would be crazy. Unused files for a Chapter 0 prologue show Ashley sneaking through forest and witnessing ritual sacrifices before capture, leaving exact details of her initial escape and transport to Spain very vague. While the abduction was credited to Jack Krauser, the lore mentions a suspect Secret Service mole who provided her protection details. This traitor's identity and whether they were part of a larger organization like the Connections or Umbrella has never been told. Though laser surgery destroyed the parasite, both Ashley and Leon suffered serious loss of physical control during the infection. Whether this left long-term psychological trauma or subtle biological markers that future antagonists could exploit remains open.